Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Need to Nerd podcast. I'm your host, Easy, and this is a very special episode. I'm joined by former co-host and actual founder of the show, Michael Merrill,
Hey, how's it going?
and Patty B. You back in here?
Hello, everyone. We're back.
Patty B. After his first Modern tournament, he takes second in fantasy football and then dives into Modern for the first time in Magic the Gathering. What a champion! Before we dive too far into this, I want to talk about what we're talking about. And I'm actually going to use our Nerd Fact of the Week to actually talk about what we're talking about today, because this is the most meta episode of Need to Nerd by a substantial margin. We have founder and former co-host Michael on, who is also a director himself, who guested as a former person for Neighborhood, which we reviewed. Fantastic short film. Check it out. We have we're talking about the movie Famish, which former guest Josh was sound director for, from the Nerd On podcast. And then Mikey was actually forwarded a gift from the director of this film from me to watch it in watching this film. So, I'm going to be real transparent. Like, Mikey, the reason that I forwarded you this movie is I was like, you know what? If I'm going to be gifted this movie that I've already watched, I want to review it with the person that I know has spent the most time in the director's seat, and just talk about how hard this type of project is with someone like you.
Yeah, and the answer is really fucking hard.
So, I'm really excited for it. This is the most meta episode ever. I already know that we'll get retweets from the people who made this film. We'll get support from them because they're friends of the show. But when Jeff Nimoy, who directed, wrote, produced the whole shebang on this film, was like, "Hey, you're the winner, but if you've already watched it, please send it to somebody." Mikey, you were the first person I thought of to send it to.
Thank you. Man, I'm glad you did. It was a really fun watch. I really liked it.
Awesome. Before we get too far into it, don't forget to check out the Discord if you want to head over to. It's just in the show notes, actually. We got. I'll probably do. We're not gonna have a Smash night this week and not a game night this week, but monthly game nights are coming, and no fantasy right now, but I know that people are getting back into TV shows as football goes down, and I already am seeing those Discords go up, so I'm excited to kind of talk about those type of things with people. I don't want to get too far ahead of, so we're gonna review Famish today, and one of the things that I really think is important to mention is yes, Josh, I would consider a friend of mine, that we've had him on the show before. But we're going to be, I think that it's really important that this content that we do remains honest, and we also just don't review things we don't like. So I'm going to say that we wouldn't be reviewing this if we didn't like it. And that's going to be the start. But Famish is a movie directed, written, it is a love project by Jeff Nimoy, who you might know as Tentamon, you might know as the director of Digimon the movie, one of the best movies not meant to be a movie of all time, in my opinion. Just literally three movies mashed together and edited and then rewritten for the English audience to compete with Pokemon. But it's really cool to see him act in it, him write it, him direct it. It is a love child of Jeff Nimoy, and that's what we'll be reviewing today. You might know him from other things as well. I know that actually we'll probably actually get into the film as to where else you might know Jeff Nimoy. But I just want to give a shout out to Jeff for gifting us a viewing of this. I know that it's about to hit the circuit of cons that are coming back, right? So this episode has also been a long time coming, and they're finally getting, after 2 years, to get to premiere this at cons. Which that's what this movie is about, right? It's about these characters, or these real people, but they're playing themselves at an anime convention, and conventions are coming back, and they're coming back in full force, and it's really cool to kind of see a caricature of that. So Any thoughts on that before we kind of move into questions from Mikey as we invited him on the show, Patty?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it as a caricature. It's something that is, made more grandiose as far as some things, but it definitely hits home as far as, what it's like to be at and experience those conventions.
Yeah. Mikey, one of the reasons that I want to invite you back on the show is like you, unlike me and Patty, have actually done what Jeff has done. Like you've made it. You like obviously okay. I know that you're gonna tell me like, oh no, I didn't do this, but like you've done this thing where like you put your blood, sweat, and tears into short films. I think you've made 3. Is that right?
Oh, no, well, so I've directed like 3 long format shorts, which are like 20 plus minutes.
Yeah.
And I've done a few like micro shorts.
Sure.
And then I've produced about a dozen short films
Sure.
and 2 features.
So you've lived in this space which we don't get to speak to. And having this be like somebody's love child, I just wanted someone on the show that would keep us honest. Like to help us understand like what does it really mean to be actual zero budget? What does it mean to be like what like obviously people just had cameras like that wasn't in the budget. Like that type of stuff. I wanted somebody to keep us honest, so I really appreciate you joining.
Yeah. No, looking forward to talking about it.
Patty, why don't you go first?
Yeah. So, Mikey, since we haven't really met before, what kind of got you into filmmaking and producing movies, and what are some of your favorite things about making movies?
I mean, I grew up a theater kid, and my dad was a huge movie buff. We had every wall in our house was just lined with bookshelves with movies and stuff, and like, so I grew up in that world. And my dad would occasionally work in theater and he'd try and get me on like film sets and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I got into high school and really got into acting, and then directed my first stage play that like I really fell in love with it. But there was always just more I wanted to do than could be done on a stage, and so film was the natural place to go. But in terms of why I fell in love with it, I think just like storytelling. Like I just really enjoyed being a storyteller, and um, I remember one of my first experiences in a theater was with a very dark play that I was probably too young to go see. I don't even remember the title of it, but like the visceral reaction that the audience had watching that was something that I was just like, I want that one day. Like I want to make people feel and react to something that I've created the way that happened tonight. And so that's kind of always been my drive of just like I want to like tell stories that are going to make people feel something, and like regardless of quality or budget or anything else, like just something that at the end of it somebody's going to have questions about or enjoy or be thinking about. Definitely was not the type to be super into like wanting to make just like general like blockbuster actions, and like
Sure.
It's cool and I love doing action, but anything that has just more of an emotional heart to it, or can like get more of a reaction from an audience that they weren't expecting is always really good for me, which is one of the, and we'll talk about it later, but it's one of the reasons why I liked this movie and was really surprised by it.
I want to mention, like, speaking of people that like suddenly enjoy dark things that I wouldn't expect them to enjoy, Patty B is like one of the nicest humans ever, and you in the last year played Frollo, which no human would ever expect you to play on stage.
Wow. Yeah.
For sure.
So Patty, you're coming at this from like a different perspective, much more from like, you do local theater, like you enjoy that type of stuff. But I want you to ask your next question, because I think that it has been asked on this podcast before to Mikey, but I think that it's really important to kind of reemphasize it.
Yeah, for sure. So with short films, a lot of times it's lower, no budget. Spencer kind of mentioned that before. So what are some of the most challenging parts as both a filmmaker or the producer side, right, when you're making these low to no budget films?
I mean, everything becomes more challenging when you're working like low to no budget, and that's a huge range too. It can be literally $0, or, I mean, low budget think is like up to like a couple million technically.
Yeah,
You know,
so
like it can be a huge range, but no
so
matter what that range is, it's extremely difficult.
so former host of CC, who's also part of the Heezy Game Media Network, Trey, he just wrote, directed a no budget quote film that was horror, and it had, I think it kicked it. They were looking for an additional $750,000 of funding, which means they already had funding, and it's still considered no budget at like $1 million, Petty.
Wow.
Yeah, it's super super low. And the thing, like, I haven't worked on anything like above $1 million before, but I've worked on a few slightly higher than I'm used to budgets. The feature I produced last year had about, just like, our production budget was about $10,000 to $15,000, I think. But regardless of what range you're working in, like, you find it's kind of the same issues that you run into, and that's always just like getting the crew you need, getting the gear you need, and it's doable at any level. I think the biggest challenges are just like, where do you make concessions, and where do you get more creative about how to find what you need. And so that can be, you know, at pulling in a lot of favors, which I've had to do on many many short films and productions, of just, somebody has a camera, somebody else has gear. Giving one of the most common things was like the current production company I work with now, two awesome producers, Robert Andrus and Brandon Ho. They I met them because I asked them to come on and be associate producers on a project, just because they had a lot of sound gear that we really needed, and we're like, hey, we'll give you production credit or a producer credit on this if you come in, loan us some of your gear, and then
I think that's so
just
common
took off
for
from
what it's
there.
worth. I want to just highlight what Mikey's just saying is like, like your $1 million budget could literally just go to like paying extras, paying like all the gear, almost all the time can still be free, and you could still blow that $1 million on like literally just
Costumes.
yes,
Yeah.
exact, like anything. And what it comes down to is like the reason it's considered no budget is like you're still bringing in favors to get
Yeah.
this thing made at that cost.
Yeah, I mean, even higher, like, for local indie stuff that's, anywhere from 10 grand to, couple hundred grand. Most of that's going to pay your actors. You're making deals with a lot of your actors and crew for working for slightly lower than their typical rate, or working for what's called back end, which is like essentially they will get a cut of whatever profits the movie makes. And they're basically saying like, yeah, I'll go ahead and not get paid for like 2 to 3 years, because I believe in this project. So like, you do have to pull in a lot of favors regardless of what you're working on, until you get into like much higher budgets. And yeah, it's definitely something where, like, watching something like this film, like Famish, like, you can see very quickly the places where like they definitely would have had to do that. One of the biggest things that they probably did to save on their budget is like locations are one of the most expensive things in a lot of shoots. And normally trying to
Hey,
pay
don't
that
don't
number of
take don't
extras-
take my question. Hold on. We're
Yeah.
gonna
We'll
let's
get there,
let's
but like,
let's
it's
put
the
a pin
things
in
that they
this.
did in this film
Yeah.
are like, they definitely called in a lot of favors. Obviously, it helped that it's Jeff Nimoy, and obviously he knows some people to ask those favors, but like, it's
Right.
something that's incredibly impressive. And so going into any film, even if I know it's going to be a terrible movie, I always have a certain amount of respect just for the fact that, like, if I know it was made outside of the Hollywood studio system, like, props to you. I don't care how bad the movie is. I'm not going to shit talk you too hard. I might be critical of some things, but like, I'm not going to talk down on you, because you still made a movie and I know like how hard and
Right.
just like brutal that process is. And so props to anybody who does it
100%.
on any level.
Yeah. I'm going to go on some of my questions. I mean, I already mentioned this. Like, one of the reasons that I invited you on to this show, the reason that, like, the second I won that award, like, that prize from Jeff, was, like, the reason I sent it to you is because, like, all right, if I'm going to review an indie film, I'm going to review it with Mikey. And I put off this entire thing due to conflict of my own schedule from, like, having a baby, from, like, you know, real life stuff, just to do it with you, and it just turned out to be perfect time that we get to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
But Maggie, what were your expectations going into watching a movie, and like what kind of lens did you put on yourself sitting down?
Well, I mean, I didn't really, in terms of expectations, I didn't really have any. Like, you kind of prepped me for like what the movie was about and what to expect, and like that it was low budget and shot at a con, and so I kind of knew what to like, how to kind of hedge my expectations going into it. But I think it's like the important thing, and we'll talk about it more later, but like I think it's less about what my expectations were and more about what I didn't expect, which was just like how good it was going to be. Because anytime I hear that it's low budget, and especially when it's shot in a situation like how this was filmed, there are all kinds of things that you're like, okay, well, there are going to be a lot of like scenes with bad audio because it's nearly impossible to get good audio in an uncontrolled environment.
I actually have like such a huge audio. I'll just say it now. There's a specific moment. It was the only moment that took me out of the film in my rewatch. That's actually not true. There's 2 moments that took me out of the film in my rewatch. But one of them is the bathroom scene with the sister and the kid, where it's very clearly dubbed over because they couldn't get good audio in that bathroom. And that's no fault. Like, that's just not shot on a soundstage, right? It's shot in a bathroom. And so, like that shit, they just had to dub over it. And, like, it was obvious to me as somebody that, like, works in audio and podcasting. It was like, oh, that was dubbed over. Like what's funny is, like, the lips were perfect. It didn't. If you didn't work in audio, you might not have even noticed it. But, like, as somebody that does, I was like, oh, that was dubbed over. And I don't know that I've ever had that in a film.
Yeah. There are like a lot of moments that, like, because my background before I started directing was I worked in sound. Sound editing, and then in theater I did audio design, as well as some like lighting design, stage management, but like mostly audio. And that's always something that even in big like blockbuster films I'll still catch sometimes, and it immediately sucks me out. And like there were a couple of times in this film where, you know, you could obviously tell that it was ADR'd, and like but even then, like
it almost is like it's not what's really interesting, and I want to highlight this, is it's because the concession you're making there, and I want it because we're talking about those, is that you're not recording that bathroom scene in a bathroom, like in a sound. You're doing it in a literal. There's a literal bathtub in a literal bathroom, and you're recording from 2 angles, right? You're on the back angle, and then you're on the front angle of this actual bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no matter which angle you get, no matter where the boom mic is placed, and also the boom mic has to be in a weird place for like any of Jeff's shots because there's an actual mirror there. So, like, how do you do that? So anyway, that was the moment for me.
In the bathroom, it's been hell. Like I've done it so many shoots, and after every single one, I'm like, I'm never filming a scene in a bathroom again. Like, I refuse to write that into any script. If I see it in a script I'm producing, I'm like, well, can we do this any other way? Because it's so awful. And I've been a sound operator and a boom operator on shoots in bathrooms, and I've literally been standing like tiptoed on the back of a toilet, like not even with a boom, but just holding the mic like over somebody and like moving it as the camera moves so it stays out of frame. And like it's always, and the worst part is when you're doing that, you know they're not going to end up using that audio anyway because it's in a bathroom. So you're like, this is so pointless. But like, yeah, outside of like things like that, you know, they are, like I said, the audio in those kinds of situations is hard enough. Audio in like uncontrolled crowd environments are super difficult to get, and like surprisingly, like, I am sure there's a lot more of this movie that is ADR or dubbed than we can even pick out, because that's just going to be inevitable with
Well,
a setting like this
shout
and
out
the
to
way they filmed this.
shout out to Josh, who like who did it. Like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
I'm
Way
telling
to
you,
go.
the only moment that I noticed, like from a sound perspective, that was it. I was like, they're in a bathroom. I can't even like fault them. So,
Yeah.
okay. So your expectations were Spencer told me what it was. I want to ask the same
so
question I
think
asked
it's
though.
less about what I
What was the lens you
expecting.
had though? Like, did you go into it like Spencer sent me this knowing I'm gonna review it, and did you think I'm gonna review it as a director? Like, how did you watch it?
No, I try really hard to. I mean, it's impossible to completely separate that side of my brain because it's so much of what I do. But I try really hard with any film to just turn that director producer brain off. Um, and the better the film, the easier that is to do, And um, if I find I'm sitting through a film and I can't turn that side of my brain off, it usually means it's not a very engrossing story, or it's like there's just so many issues or things like that. Um, and thankfully, like, this one was one where I was able to sit through it the first time and just kind of watch it and not have that part of my brain turn on very often. And then afterwards, I was able to go back and kind of watch it again with that producer director brain on and just be like, all right, let's actually analyze this for review. And that's something that's gotten easier to do as I've gotten older, especially I take care of my nieces part-time, and watching a lot of the movie, like kids movies with them, like, has really helped. I'm like, I need to turn my director brain off right now, or I'm going to rip my hair out. Like, I can't
You gotta watch more
do this
Bluey,
anymore.
man. Like, as somebody that like just likes good writing, like you just gotta watch Bluey with them. It's the best.
Bluey is one of my favorite shows.
Yeah,
I watch it all the time.
that
I
one's the
love
best.
Bluey.
That one's good. I got
So good.
I gotta ask this next question. I felt like watching this. There were a lot of scenes where they did a really good job of putting a lot of feeling into how Jeff specifically felt. Within like 30 seconds to 2 minute bursts. Like, and 2 minutes is like long. Like that, I don't even know that it ever actually took 2 minutes. But like they'd have like a 5 second awkward moment that you knew exactly. I'm not even 5, like maybe 3 seconds. Like, I'm actually just like way overdoing this. As somebody that's like directed films that you've acted, how hard is that to like convey emotion in a film you're directing while you have to have like a stand-in and then you have to do it, and that, like, how is that?
I mean, it's super hard, and there's a reason I have only done it when I've like absolutely had to. I think the 2 times that I've acted in something I was also directing, it's because another actor dropped out at the last minute and we couldn't find anybody else, and I was decent enough of a fit, because it is super hard. Like, I think Jeff did a fantastic job. I think he handled it really well, and it's very obvious that, like, obviously he had some advantages, like he was playing essentially himself, in a way. He has a ton of experience as a voice actor, as a writer, as a director for animation, and especially since his background is in animation, which almost more than any other format really understands what it's like to work on a budget with a tight deadline and needing to make sure that you give proper service to a story with the limited time and resources that you have. That I think he was able to really, know what he needed from each scene before going into it. That's the biggest thing with any director, period, but especially when you're also acting in it. Like, not only you, but your assistant director and everybody else in the cast and crew need to know what you're trying to get out of a scene, and that preparation, both from a technical perspective and from a storytelling perspective. He obviously had an amazing crew who knew the script, who knew what they were trying to accomplish, and they had to have created a really solid plan ahead of time to be able to pull this off, because inevitably everything that can possibly go wrong on a film set will probably go wrong. And so you have to have so many plans in place. And if you don't, the minute something goes wrong, you're in panic mode and trying to just problem solve. And you can't do that when you're trying to be the director and then also have to turn that off and step in and be a character and be genuine and emotional in a scene.
Yeah,
So he obviously had a great crew and,
I got to
really
rewind
knew
on
what
what
he was
you
doing.
just said, Mikey, because I as I was typing this, I was like 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and then I actually rewatched one of the scenes I came on here, and I was like, how long did this actually take? And it was actually 14 seconds of awkwardness. And I want to understand, like, how as a person that's done like that low budget stuff, not only is he acting for himself, which I found really impressive in this, and I'm like, honestly, like, I'm not the biggest Tentamon fan. I honestly am a huge like Digimon movie fan, so like my Jeff Nimoy love is like, like he made one of my favorite like kid movies, right?
Mhm.
But it is impressive to me, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong, the dedication it takes to keep in like 14 seconds of awkward to really convey a message that you can then, in my opinion, because of when this was placed in the scene, because when this was is like right when he gets there with the handler and with the guy, and then I think it's 14 seconds,
Goes
and
with
then
the paycheck.
yeah, and then like
Yeah.
the rest of the awkward moments can all be 1 to 2 seconds because they've established how awkward this is for Jeff. But it takes an amount of discipline to really hammer that home to me. Am I wrong? Like, is that not good? Like, that's what I was. That's my question. Is you're the actor in this position. You to me, I'd want to keep like as many seconds as I'm in. Like, I'd just been like, here's all of the awkwardness that I could portray. How awkward was it? And then again, how do I portray that awkwardness throughout the rest of the film?
I think first, I think they did a great job with that. I think there's a lot that goes into it, and being the actor, writer, director, and being heavily involved in the editing bay, I'm sure like that's hard to separate yourself. And I think one of the biggest things in terms of the question about like knowing what to cut and like wanting to keep more as much in as possible, like that really does come down to the edit and to having a good team. I know when I've been acting and directing, a lot of times my assistant director is almost being or my cinematographer are being as much directors as I am, and you have to really trust those people and value their opinion and be like, and when they say like, hey, I think we need to cut this, or I think we need to
that's a good
this
answer.
down,
Yeah.
being able to trust them is super.
That was my initial
super
reaction.
important.
Go ahead, Patty.
Right, was a lot of that has to come through editing, because when you're in that moment, it's really hard to see, especially when you're jumping between, being the coach and the director, telling folks what to do, doing it. I think a lot of that, maybe you try some things, right, and then let things go, and then find that in the editing room.
And Mikey, correct me, like that's an establishing shot, right? Like it's like it is purveying the story moving forward.
You're talking about that, like
that specific scene. Yeah,
I mean, not necessarily an establishing shot, like technically, but I'd say it's establishing an important tone for the movie.
Yeah,
which is how uncomfortable he is at these cons and how much of he's kind of an asshole, and like this is his personality and this is the way he is, and like get ready because it's going to be 90 minutes of this until the character changes.
well the thing is like I think it I'm gonna put a pin in this because it's actually gonna be one of my love it's later, because you answered my question really well.
I do want to say also, like, there's a really common, just one last thing on this point, which is there's a really common saying in film, and I'm forgetting who the quote's from, but it's the movie is written or is made 3 different times. once in the script, once during production, and once in the edit, and they're completely different movies. And I'm sure that there are very different versions of what this movie was in the editing bay that is even more different from what they were thinking they were shooting at the time, that's even more different from what they had in the script, well, and being able to at least keep a through line and make sure that you're staying consistent with what the emotional tone of the story is, what the message you want to get across is, and the audience that you're trying to deliver that to throughout all three of those steps is super important. And that's obviously something that they accomplished here in the final product.
I love that. And one of the things that I was going to mention that I decided not to, but I will because of what you just said, is like, I have no idea how many takes that was. Like, that could have been one take. That could have been 15 takes. Like, that depends on when it was filmed, how much time they had left. Like, because of the budget of this film, like, that could have been, who knows what that specific moment was.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, that, whatever I counted, like, to me, 14 seconds of awkwardness or so, that could have been 3 times. That could have been 1 time. That could have been 15 times. Mm-hmm. But all I know is that it set the tone for a lot of what Jeff was feeling throughout the rest of the film. As a person that's done this in like this no budget, how do you think that they handled capturing a con?
Do you mean from like a technical aspect or like?
I mean from. Here's the thing. I do not want this to be the first part of my next segment, which is could be betters, and I want to know, how do you feel like they captured cons on this film?
Like what it's like to be at a con?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think that's the point of the film. So no, actually, that is actually a really good question. You might have just fixed my could be better. That is not the point of this film. It is actually not to be at a con that this film is about. It's actually the other side. It is to be a person presenting at a con.
Being a person of interest.
Yes.
I mean, I think they captured the atmosphere of a convention super well, and like a lot of the, you could tell everybody who made that movie had been to a lot of cons, because even side people that would pop up for 30 seconds, or just little insert shots, you're like, oh, I've seen that dude at a con before, like for sure, So I think they captured that really, really well, and I think they also did show the other side of the curtain, of like what it's like to be, and we hear stories about it all the time, about what it's like to be the like famous or fame-ish person, and how tiring that must be, and how, like just all the crazy different experiences that you must have in a single day, and you do that over and over and over again. And so I think that and we're kind of switching orders here, I know, from your show notes and stuff, but like one of the things I love so much about it was the fact that they really gave this view of like why the fans love it so much, as well as why the people who keep going do it. Like that's kind of the whole, without spoiling anything, that is the whole point of this movie and of Jeff's arc, is like going from like, I'm doing this for money, to like realizing why all of his friends that are going to these cons enjoy going to them so much, and the love that those communities have for their fandom, and being,
I love it, dude,
lucky enough to like be receiving of that as one of these celebrities.
I want to be clear though. I think that we all did a really good job of not spoiling the movie so far. There comes a point though when we get into Could Be Betters and Lovitz where we are going to talk about spoilers. So one, if you haven't watched this, it is Fame-ish on Amazon. That is actually how you have to search it, otherwise you will not find it. I will say, I think just like right now, I'll give it a thumbs up. Like they should watch it. Like, you guys feel the same? Yeah, thumbs up all around. Go watch it. Let's go into spoiler territory. I'm gonna disrupt the heck out of these show notes because I'm gonna go first. I I don't know. I think I don't know what it would cost to get a con to let you do like a full sweeping shot of a con or like a full walkthrough shot of a con. But like I felt like they did not capture like we'll get into this during some maybe my Lovitz, but like I have done panels at cons before, like as a Magic the Gathering person. This con, I just don't believe the Madison, Wisconsin's con is this small, is how it was presented to me, and I don't think it would be that hard to get permit. I don't know, Mikey. Like you tell me. Like what would it cost? Like $500? Like what would it actually cost to get one shot through the con?
I mean, you typically don't work in terms of like one shot. You usually have a larger like.
Okay, but let's say you do 5 shots to the con to do like place con shots through, right? Like I just don't. It seemed because they did a really good job of one. Like it was very clear that they either shot after the con, as the con door closed, or before the con doors opened, and it was still the con. Like that is what a con. Like if you're the first one to con, that's what it looks like. That is not even the first one. Like if you're like the first,
Thursdays,
the first 300 people at a con, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
But if you were there in the afternoon, that is not what a con looks like.
Just super packed, and because I imagine like some like drone shot like above things might have helped fix that. Maybe some like going through the crowd, right? As far as Spencer to what you're saying, right? And I don't know if that would take too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think a drone shot would be out of what the cinematography was for the film, right? That would have made sense. But like, if you like did a cut scene, and Mikey, you correct me, you're the director. Like, if I do a cut to a scene, and I can cut through a con line or whatever through like an actual packed con, like that takes me through this experience.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Like, there's really no way to answer the like what would it cost question. That's the thing, is because there's so many things that go into a contract like that. Again, I'm sure it really helps that it is somebody who has some status at these cons, but I can tell you there's going to be 2 different like issues that they would have been balancing, which is like what does the film need versus what the con will allow versus what the
and
crew can actually pull off, because some of that may have been the con saying like, hey, we don't want you to film during our busiest days.
That's okay.
And then some of that may have been the crew just being like, hey, people are going to recognize several of the people in this film.
Yeah,
we can't stop production.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, have these meetings.
That would be inappropriate. You know what? I think they and this the only reason I'm saying it could be better. So I was at a Magic event that was filmed, where they asked everyone to just act as though they were at a Magic event, and they did it. Like, they got to do the filming, it was in the production. I would assume that if you're like, hey, we've got Jeff Nimoy, like, you all know him, he's the creator of the Digimon movie, like, that's all you have to say. All we want you to do is just, like, not look at the camera. Like, if somebody F's up, and then they're like, okay, well, then we can't do this. And maybe that's what they did. I don't have the behind the scenes on this. I'm just saying, like, it felt like we got the first 300 people in the con look, and that's the only part of the con look. And as somebody that often has to join cons at, like, you know, in the afternoon, like maybe after the first 4 hours of work, I do not get to experience what was shown.
Yeah, which is fair. I mean, I think the other thing is that part of that is also like this wasn't in a big con, and that's kind of not just a logistical thing, but probably a little bit intentional, because not all cons are that. Like, I've been to a lot of cons where the entire con looked like it was the first 2 days of the con.
Oh, that's fair. Maybe I am in the minority.
Yeah, like, I mean, obviously, like FanX or something like that, like, is gonna be super packed. But I've been to a lot of other cons where it's just
so.
Like,
fun fact, that is like the one that I
people here every day, you know.
So fun fact, FanX is what I presented at, and that was what I was judging it off of.
Yeah, not.
All right. Anyway, that was my. I feel embarrassed now. I just want to give a quick warning. That there is going to be some talk of substance abuse, whether it's alcohol or drugs. I just want to say beforehand that you should use your medication as it's prescribed. Go ahead, Patty.
Yes. So that was one of my could be betters. Here we'll start with. I'm building a corny scale, right, as far as where things go, from like no salt or butter to the corn kid from TikTok. I was kind of rating this kind of in the 5 range, right? It's movie theater butter with extra salt. Just kind of middling. I don't know. There are some moments where it got a little too corny for me, but that's how it is. And then, yeah, like Spencer kind of mentioned there with the Xanax use when he's kind of going off the deep end, that was just like an actual amount that like could do horrible things, and I was not. I think that can be harmful.
Can I yum your yuck?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Because normally I don't like yucking people's yum, but I want to yum your yuck. I think that Jeff is really sending a message through this specific piece, and he's really trying to hammer home to people to not abuse drugs. And sure. I, as somebody that can understand that, would encourage people that if you watch this films, that I don't think that the film glorifies Xanax use. I think that what it does is it says don't take Xanax and drink alcohol. I think that is literally one of the points of the film, and I'm a little confused by your could be better.
It's so I thought that it was kind of a thing through the film where there's a line, right, where whenever
take as much as you can spare.
As much as you can spare.
Yeah. I think that your yuck for this, your could be better.
Intentional yuck, like
I think it's supposed. I think it's supposed to be there, and sure. I don't think that, for one, we haven't mentioned this, and I will put it in the rating for the podcast. This is not a kids movie, and we're usually really family friendly here, but Xanax is a prescription drug for a reason. As somebody that has clinical anxiety, I don't even take it. Like I think it's pretty strong. It's not something that I would use personally without my doctor really talking to me about it. And it is clear that Jeff in this is saying that either he personally has abused it or his character in this film has abused it. But I'm not trying to yum your yuck, but I think that it is clear in the film that he is abusing it and you shouldn't do it.
Sure. I can see that. You
still think it was too much, though?
Yeah.
You think the point was conveyed too many times?
Yeah.
I think that's a fair criticism. Like, it's already clear he's abusing it. Mikey, you've been thinking about this. I know that you have your own struggles. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's. I think in terms of the Xanax usage and the alcohol usage, I kind of lean more towards with Spencer, where I think that was very intentional, and I'll get more into it when we get to our love it's, but one of the things that I actually really liked about the film was the fact that they did not curtail or hide or glorify that lifestyle at all, and really did show how harmful that was to him, not just physically but socially and mentally. That being said, I do agree with Patty about like the corniness of that. Like there were a lot of things in this movie that were a little over the top for me, or a little like kind of like hammy in terms of the acting or things like that, that I think may have been why you felt the like that way about the Xanax usage, is because there's a very stark contrast a lot of times between scenes where it's like these very corny, like bordering on dad jokes sometimes, and then the very next scene we're like pounding Xanax and vodka and like walking through a con, you know. So like that balance I think is probably one of my things that could have been better. Was like I don't think that the Xanax usage was necessarily too much, so much.
Oh my gosh,
there could have been a better balance between the comedy and that serious tone.
Hold on.
Sharp shifts.
I actually think I have an exact could be better for this exact thing. Because I had this thought. This was not true in my first watch, and it was true in my second watch. So the fact that he does the scene. This is like spoiler. Like we're gonna get into spoilers, and I want to be clear that like if you got this far, you still haven't heard a real spoiler yet, but you're about to hear one. Okay, so when Lana walks up to him and is it? Nikki, but that's not her real name, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, that is Nikki's real name.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Lana walks up to
Brian.
Yeah, when Lana. Oh, it's Lana. That's not her real name.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, when Lana walks up to Nikki and him, like, and like has this fit after they just had that really sweet moment in bed, that was like, why would you do it this? Like, that was heart-wrenching. It goes like, oh, this is the climax to, oh no, it's not the climax yet to, is it the climax? Like, that was a little too roller coastery. I actually agree with that. And I think that it goes into what Michael just said of like, yeah, we get it. Thank you. So, Mikey, do you have any other could be betters before I move on to Lovitz?
Not really. I mean, I would say like when I say that there was that balance issue, I think it was very slight. Like it was just a tiny bit too much on the, comedy, and like I was kind of the opposite, where I actually liked the fact with how quickly they like it had this sweet moment.
And man, I hated it.
Immediately destroyed it.
You know what's funny?
As I like about how that would go.
I did like it the first time, but the fact that they just had the conversation, it bugged me the second time I watched it. I'm like banging on my keyboard. Like it bugged. Like the second time I watched it, I was like, which is not even true. This is actually the third time I've watched this film, so it's actually the third time I watched it. I was like, why would you not, like, you've known each other for like, maybe that's why, I don't know. It takes place in such a short time, it's so hard. But like, I've been the guy that like fell in love in like, 48 hours before, it's fine.
Yeah, I think the pacing of that was like, in general, both with the comedy and what we were just talking about, and with that about their romance, like I think pacing was probably the biggest issue that I had with it at certain times. And I think even if they had found a way to still shoot it in the same location, because I'm sure like all one con, but like,
oh, that'd be so hard because they
maybe make it feel like it was like he had traveled
like two cons. Dude, that'd be so cool. Dude, it would have been so cool.
Pick up in Denver.
Yeah. That actually would have been insane.
Same. Like most cons,
look
pretty similar.
To be fair, that would probably be so much more expensive. Like the fact that they got to shoot this at one con probably saved them like, I don't know, like $2-3 million, like so much money.
That's more of a story thing of like you could have made it seem like two separate cons while still shooting it at one con. I think it's more about like the extras and stuff, where like if you see the same person, between. I don't know
if you just make it. If you don't make it Milwaukee, you make it like Salt Lake and Denver. Like it would, like that wouldn't even matter. Just need to change costumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go.
Do you know what? Let's go into my first love bit. Because I actually think that it goes against what we just said as it could be better. There were very few continuity issues in this film. That was impressive. That is something that I expected to take me out of it, and I finished it today and I was like, wait a second, were there any continuity? Like I didn't see like a left hand, right hand. I didn't see a mug in a different place. Like I didn't see a costume in a different place. I didn't see a person doing something different. Like that was really impressive. Like there were like no continuity issues that I could find.
Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I want to say, because it's been a minute since I rewatched it. Not too long, but like I think I rewatched it like a.
I know. I asked you like he gave us this film in like October,
like a
right?
year and a half ago.
No, October.
No, it was earlier because I watched it when we were still at our old apartment. So you initially sent this.
Oh man, it must be so long.
It's been so long.
Sure.
But I did rewatch it last, I think about October, because we were going to do this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Watched it. But I think I remember seeing like one, maybe two shots that were like reused shots, but like
that could be true. No. I think that there was overhead shots, right? They reused.
Yeah,
that could be. That
I'd have to rewatch it.
I would too.
There were very few continuity errors, which was very impressive.
Yeah,
their transitions.
So my other love it's. I'm just gonna rapid fire them, and then you guys can jump in. Like, stop me if you want to add to it. The Lana reveal twice. I think that both her age reveal was fantastic, and then her delivery of Lana Lang is both my real name and who I was cosplaying. Both of those scenes were fantastic. Like, that was so good. I thought it was amazing. I love the awkward moments. I really hope the dude that was swimming across the pool while Nikki and Jeff were talking got paid. Like, I hope that was not somebody they're like, hey, can we film while you're doing this? Because he deserved every dollar that he got paid if he got paid. It was so funny. I was cracking up today. And then I felt like there was such good casting. I think a really good example of this, Mikey, you try not to spoil it, or maybe it was Patty. One of you kind of mentioned it. The very beginning scene where they talk to the guy in the Naruto cosplay, and then that they reused later for to show you the time frame.
Came back to there,
dude. I've met that guy. Like, and what's really funny is we were watching it, and I was like, oh, did he deliver that line poorly? And I was like, you know what? No, actually, I've met the guy that would deliver the line exactly like that. He played that character really well. And I think that character is cool. Like, I legitimately am like, I don't know. I'm impressed with these people that can go to these conventions and let themselves out like this. Like, I think that the cast typing and the overall accurate casting in this film was amazing. Like, the kid asking for the autograph after, and like they gave him his outfit. Like, like the casting in this film was so on point. That is honestly, like, you could have cast anyone for any role on this budget, and that is not what happened. Like, I was really impressed.
Well, I think one thing on that is like, I don't think that guy was an actor, the Naruto guy. There are very few people credited in this film, and because I can tell you right now, the way they saved money was like they just went to cons, be like, "Hey, do you want to be in a movie?
Dude,
sign this release
that'd
form.
be so. That makes me so happy. Please tell me that is true. Josh, you're watching. Jeff, you're probably watching. Let us know. Like, I thought it was so good. I wish more. If that is true, every low budget film should be made like this. Like, it was.
I 100% would be like, yes, I will be in your movie.
It was so good. It was so good. Not just the Naruto guy, but like there were so many moments where like somebody like the Naruto the My Hero dancers. there's no chance they're credited. Like, they just filmed them in that elevator shaft, right? Like, that was fantastic. Anyway, I thought the casting was great.
With that note on casting, like, I definitely know each of those people. Like, we all know, like, a person who is exactly like Bobby the Handler, or someone who is exactly like Brian, the rival star. That was perfect.
Yeah, that's actually
he's not that, by the way, though. He's actually like
a
total sweetheart for what it's worth. He actually
did things.
Yeah, go ahead.
He's so like the supporting cast was like my number, like I only had 2 things for like my love, which the supporting cast was one of them, and like all super funny, super authentic. Not just the people who were obviously just con attendees that they got to film it, but like and the guy you're talking about is Brian Donovan. And yeah, like probably my favorite just because he is such a genuinely good guy and like a super, like he's a big advocate for a lot of different like charities and like all these different things, and just the sweetest dude in real life, but got to play such an asshole in this, and like just the worst guy, and he did it so well, and that was just
so today I started this film with Maxwell in the room because I thought he was going to fall asleep because he was super sick today. And he goes, "Is that Davis?" Yes, it is. Also, we're gonna pause this. you're not watching Davis say some of the stuff he says in this movie.
You're done.
But like I love him. Like, Davis is a great character. He's super funny. Their banter together felt so great. Like, if you watch Digimon, like, and you get this relationship, you're like, oh, this is funny. Like, this is really funny. So it was really great. And then the next thing I want to mention, I might cry during this, but listen, I am not Jeff Nimoy. I'm not anybody, but I have felt a small amount of this famous crap. That this movie related to me. Like, I've been on a con panel for MTG. I've been a guest host on podcasts for MTG. I've done. People have told me that I'm their inspiration in MTG. Like, and so many moments felt real for me, where Jeff's reactions are honestly my reaction. Like, I have this reaction. I actually bet the person that I'm talking about is listening to this, so shout out to you. But somebody told me that, like, they weren't going to podcast because they didn't think they were good enough. And then they listened to me on CC. They're like, this guy's authentic, so I can just be my authentic self, get better every week like he does, and then I can podcast. And it's like, he said that to me, and I was like, I have to put on my headphones. I'm going to go cry now. Like, that's like an unbelievable thing to say to a human. And multiple times people said things to Jeff. He's like, that's stupid. Like, I'm Jeff Nimoy. Like, I'm not the person you think I am. What's weird is that I am my authentic self, and that people look up to me for that. And to me, as somebody that does not think a lot of themselves, that's weird. And I thought Jeff did a really good job of conveying that. You know, people work really hard on a lot of things that they do. I think often people don't fake it. And that I'm just less willing to fake it than other people. So, like, if you're from CC, if you're here from this show, if you're here from Smash Through, if you're here from my Twitter for some, like, whatever you're here from, I think that being your genuine self is really cool. And one of the loves that I would have of the show is how endearing it was that Jeff was himself. Like, he's like, dude, I'm not gonna hug you. I actually can tell Michael wants to talk about that exact moment, so I'm gonna pitch it to him so I don't cry.
Yeah, so like that, the
The
second thing that
handshake.
I had with, I mean, the way the movie ends, like I just was not expecting that, and like the guy coming in with the picture was it like is just, oh my god, I cried like hard at that one. Like, and I don't cry at a lot. I get teary plenty of times in movies, but like fully crying, like that was something where I was just like, that broke my heart. And I remember going to Alex and because I'd be like, hey, I have to watch this for Spencer's podcast. Um, and for the first half of the movie, I like paused it about 3/4 of the way through, and she asked how it was, and I was like, "Oh, it's pretty good. Like it's like there's things that could be better, but like it's fun." And then she looked over at me right when that scene was happening, and I was just in tears. She's just like, "Oh, so it got better." I was like, "Oh, it's so good. This is so heartbreaking. Like it's so." But like the thing I was gonna go with, like my second thing was like the fact that it kind of ties in with like what we were talking about with the drug use and things like that. But the fact that this is a film which is very obviously like at least partially autobiographical or based
It's a
like
total
heavily
POV.
on,
It's a total
yeah,
POV.
yeah, if not his life, then people he knows for sure. And with the subject of the film, like the protagonist essentially also being the writer, the director, the lead actor in it, like this movie could have so easily just been a cringy, self-glorifying ego stroke. And there were so many points, especially early on in the movie, where I was worried that that's kind of where it was starting to head and straying into that territory. But by the end of the movie, when it gets to that scene, like I was crying right there with him. And like they just did such a good job of making you sympathize with Jeff without ever excusing his behavior, without ever glorifying his behavior, and saying like, yeah, he's got issues, he can be an asshole, he's got these like
They,
substance abuse problems, but that doesn't make him a bad guy, it doesn't make him heartless, it doesn't make him irredeemable. And at the end of the day, like he's trying to figure his shit out just like everybody else is.
He is asking the same question as like it takes the POV stance and it like flips it. It's like, wait, am I asking the same question as the audience? Like, am I? What is important to me? Because is it what's important to the audience? Because the audience is not Jeff. The audience is Jeff's audience.
Mm-hmm.
But Jeff is the POV. So like, I think that it does ask that question. Like, is what is important to Jeff the thing that's important to the audience? And I think that it answers that question really well, like you said, Michael.
Yeah, and you do spend so much of the film thinking that this is just a POV of like celebrity life and like nerd culture and that kind of thing. You're like, oh, this is kind of like a cute, occasionally cringy look at both of those things. And then, by the time you get to that ending, you realize like, oh no, this was a film about the fans and about how much of a disservice people like Jeff's character in the beginning were doing to those fans, by just simplifying them down to nerds and fanatics and things like that. And like and what we talked about earlier about like the reason that this culture is so important to so many people is not because they just really loved a TV show. It's because that's the TV show they watched with their dad or with their brother or with their best friend, and like that's something that is far more impactful and meaningful to them than anything that he could have created on Digimon ever could have been. And that's why he's there, and that's why he needs to be a better person, and I think that if there had been any other reason that Nikki had given him a second chance, it would have been a shitty movie. Like it would have just not been worth it. But the fact that that's the lesson that he learned, for like that was the only reason good enough for Nikki to be like, to not immediately be like, I am never talking to you again, like, so yeah, just watching his character arc and seeing him grow like that was like just really what made the movie for me. And the ending makes up for anything else that could have been done better or written better or performed better, or no matter what money they
It
possibly
like adds to it in some ways.
you know. Yeah.
It just becomes so much more. And that's not as like uncommon. Like it seemed like just like one interaction, but that happens all the time with fandoms and nerd things that we love and enjoy, right? We invest ourselves into that, and it's good for them to have that like realization. Like I think you said something about like as far as like lines in the script of, if it wasn't me, it would be someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no, it was you. It like you're important, and what you did matters.
Yeah. And like the fact that you don't realize that until it's usually too late. And with Jeff, it almost is like he very like almost goes over the edge, and the fact that I think there's so many messages that can be pulled from this movie, and some of them, most of them I'm sure were intentional, but some of them maybe not. And like that is probably one of the biggest ones, I think, if you're looking at Jeff's character, of just like the fact that you don't know the impact that you have until it's too late, or until it's way past the time that you thought you would have any impact. I mean, that's one of my favorite bands that I've followed since I was like probably like 14 years old. It's not even a band, it's just the singer who's had multiple bands. I had an opportunity to meet them and talk with them and like tell them what their music meant for me, and the fact that their music had literally saved my life when I was going through severe depression and suicidal tendencies and things like that. And like that's something that you do hear stories about all of the time, but until you see it like you do at the end of this film, like it doesn't feel real. And this film did a really good job of showing very genuinely those real moments that happen all the time in our fandoms, in MTG, like Spencer was talking about, in film, in like I am very into D&D, and I have DM'd professionally before for
no. We'll talk about that part later. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, and anyway, the times that you find out that you impacted someone like that, and one of my favorite things that ever happened in film, I have frequently thought about leaving film. Like it is just part of being a filmmaker, is you are constantly questioning whether you should keep going. And I know that whenever that time comes for me to step away, I will be able to be happy about what I accomplished because of one Facebook message I received from a film that I did a while ago that it dealt with some issues of like domestic abuse, and a woman I did not know messaged me and reached out to me to tell me how much that film helped her to kind of come to terms with some of the things she experienced and like put into words what that was like psychologically for her. And like that helped her like connect with her therapist about what she had been experiencing. And like I honestly thought that was probably one of like the worst films I had done, and was just like, wow, this is like getting the least attention out of anything, and like it's won no awards and all this other stuff. But then months after it came out, this woman reached out to me and like made such a huge impact on me as a filmmaker and as a person. And so like those moments I think are so special for any creative art and industry, and this movie did such a good job. Jeff did such a good job of capturing that in one scene.
Yeah. First of all, Michael, I appreciate you shared multiple really personal things in the last like 2 minutes. So I want to thank you for that. You also made me think of some of those types of messages that maybe I've received from my time, and I really need to hear that right now, so I just want to thank you personally too. I want Patty and I to share the next love it, dude. So I don't know how scoring a film works. I don't know how like music in a film works, like when you actually have like music in a film, but there was like it had to be less than 5 minutes where 5 different songs played to convey emotions of Jeff without Jeff having to say a line between like bed, out of bed, in bed, out of bed, like down the stairs, out of like the room, like like I knew exactly what was felt through this film, through the music, to a T.
It was done very well.
I'm gonna listen. I don't give this kind of praise often. I'm not that kind of guy. This was scored as well as like, oh man, I'm gonna get so much crap for this. The amount that the score gave the emotion was like on the level of Lord of the Rings and Star Wars to me. Like I knew exactly what I was supposed to be feeling during this film. What was funny though is that there's not music throughout the whole film. It was in the moments there was music, they told me what I was supposed to be feeling, and that was weird to me. Like when I was watching today, I was like, oh, I know what you're feeling. Oh, I know what you're feeling now. Oh, I know what you're feeling now. That was weird, but it was very conveyed.
Top notch.
What? Is that low budget, Michael? Like, what in the world happened?
Well, I mean, there's a few different ways to score something. That's usually one of the larger costs in post-production after editing is scoring a film.
They were using real music, like real music.
Yeah, and there are some cheaper ways of doing that, of like you can contact a composer and they can have things they've already written.
No, this was like
custom for you.
This was like actual like lyrical like top 40 songs.
Yeah, and like that includes when you're creating soundtrack and stuff like that. Like,
okay.
There's a lot of ways you can kind of cut costs there. At the end of the day, though, as long as it's
are samples cheaper?
Yeah, you typically have to. You can't really use samples in film. You have to buy the rights to use.
How did they get so many songs?
It's very likely that he had a contact with a music producer or something that was able to get them a deal. Because it's probably calling in favors when it's this low budget to be able to get like really popular music.
Patty, this is my last my last love it. Like, what happened here? Like, you had the same reaction to me, right? Like, where it was like, oh, I know what I'm feeling because the music told me, not only like sound-wise, which like you could just hire a composer to do that for the film, but like lyrically, they told us what we were feeling.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's something that's important to me, right? Is music, because I love music, and what was the? Can't remember the name of the last song, but there's so many different points where, not even just telling you how to feel, but like even if it's just an instrumental, like like it was great. I don't know how much more to.
What are your other love-its?
Add there. The only other like love it that I have that I had put down here was, we talked a little bit about how I kind of do some acting at a local or community level, and watching like the parts where Jeff is trying to find work in LA and through whether it's stepbrother or people he knows, right? And that like, oh, you're too overqualified, you're underqualified, you're not exactly what we're looking for, right? Like that grind and struggle of finding work in entertainment just really hit me where I live. Part of the reason why like I do it at a local community level and not professionally.
I want to call out, you actually have other things on here that I think that we should call out. One of them is that Jeff that Jeff Ryan scene because I think
I thought we kind of talked about.
I know, but like I want to actually cover it.
Sure. Yeah. No. That. Man. Just Ryan's character and how hearing him struggle to express what he's feeling, right? It's not just that, his mom died, right? It's everything about that character and how, I mentioned before, right? We all know those people in our lives for these characters. Same goes for Ryan, and that's that was special.
I'm never gonna try to compare myself to Jeff. I think that Jeff has had an impact on me, and like the ripple effect that Jeff has had is gonna be really great. But I'm gonna tell a couple of stories. I'm gonna tell the one about the last 2 weeks, where a person told me that I was their inspiration, and that like I was the reason they were doing the thing that they were doing, that nobody else had reached back out to them, and that like I was their cause moving forward. And for that one, like I didn't know how to respond to that. How do you respond to somebody that's saying something to you like that? I think that that's something that Jeff conveys really well in here. But additionally, like, how does that person move forward when they have that interaction? And I think that is also something that Jeff conveys really well in here. If we back up a little bit and we think about the people that impacted me, I think they also did a really good job of like paying it forward. And I think that one of the things that this film teaches really well is kindness. That caring about the humanity of a person is far more important than like $20 to get a signature or whatever it is to get a hug. I don't think they ever cover that, but like I had a doctor message me when I was doing constructive criticism. I'm gonna cry during this, Patty, so enjoy it. That he was doing a surgery and he thought about my podcast, Constructive Criticism, and about being always improving, and he thought, what can I do better right now than I would normally do to save this person's life that's about to die? And Mikey, you mentioned the person that messaged you something similar, where like you didn't mean to give them this message, but the thing that was conveyed was this thing that you would never, like, I would never expect a doctor to listen to my podcast, be in surgery, and think of my podcast during surgery. And the part about Famish is that it is a ripple effect. It is the thing that you do that impacts someone else, that then impacts the next person, and so on and so on. And so being that positive influence, that's the important part. That's the message of the movie, and I thought it did it really well. I'm gonna cry now. But like it is so much more important than your Twitter followers, your Instagram followers, than your TikTok followers. It's like, how did you make that next person help another person, and how did they help? How did they pay it forward? Like, for lack of a better term. And I think that it does it really well.
For sure.
You're supposed to talk now, Patty. That's actually your.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's your segment.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Patty, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
You've made me do this podcast. I've done it more because of you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Spencer. I enjoy coming on and.
No, stop. No, you're like embarrassed now. I don't like that. You don't even be embarrassed. I actually just like love doing it with you, just like I love doing it with Mikey. Mikey's, got his own life now, and like, I don't know, like, I think that Famish does a really good job of conveying the message of like the positivity and like the thing that you are putting forward does it. Mike, any thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I definitely agree that like regardless of what you're doing, whether it's painting or making films or podcasting or directing anime, like that, you don't know the impact you're going to have. You don't know who's going to like what you do and who doesn't. I have this conversation with my wife all the time, who is a brilliant artist and does not think that she is good whatsoever.
Does she not?
She does not, but she is such a good artist.
Oh my gosh, she's going to love the end of this podcast.
Yeah, I have to have regular conversations with her about the fact that like you don't know until you put it out there, and there are, no matter how successful or not you are at the thing you're going after, like I promise you there's going to be at least one person who you don't know who's going to find that and it's going to mean something to them. And if it's just one person, it makes it worth it.
That's so great.
It's great things too. That way you can always be like 100% your true authentic self, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
And go all in with the things that you do.
Yeah.
If you want to suggest a topic, you can do it in the comments. We want to do it every 2 months, so leave a comment on the YouTube videos. Patty, I'm going to give you your Patty's poll. What is the poll this week?
Yeah, so poll this week, I think we'll put it up in the Discord, and I'll post it to Twitter when the episode goes live here. Is that what's your favorite part of an anime or fan comic convention? Is it the cosplays? Is it the meet and greet with the actors? Is it the artists and the things you can buy as far as those kind of products or other? Leave a comment what
and
your favorite part is.
We'll put this on the obviously on the Spotify as well. Really quickly, I want to give some shout outs. I felt like that was important for this episode. So first of all, shout out for Jeff for gifting us a viewing of this show. At least one of us got to watch it for the first time through that. Shout out to Josh for sound on this film, guesting on this show, just being a friend of the show. I don't want to pretend like we're not reviewing a show that like somebody that we have had on the show is close to. Like, I want to be transparent that like one, we're critiquing a thing that like people that we love did. So, and then I want to give a shout out to Mikey. I actually want to give a couple. So first of all, Mikey is the best DM I've ever had. I've done D&D. No, don't smile like that. Shut up. I've done D&D 3 times. The first time I just quit because it was stupid. The second time, I just fell out of it. Like, I couldn't find anybody at my level. The way that like Mormonism and like D&D aligned was not great. Because like I had to be a specific type of character in a specific way, and like only certain people did that. They were all specific levels. It wasn't great. The third time we did it, Mikey did it, and before he did that, he actually DM'd Star Wars for me. He tried all the way, and I like to credit myself that Mikey is the greatest DM in the world because he did my Star Wars game. Because he's so good. Like, and if you're looking for a DM professionally, I think Mikey should charge like $75 a session or more, and you should hire him. I don't know what that would actually cost. That might be too low, to be honest.
Not $75.
No, way more. Way more. No, way more. No. Shut up. Stop talking. I'm promoting you, Mikey.
Thank you.
He voice acts for his non-player characters. He when he talks about how much he loves storytelling in this podcast. I don't have time for D&D right now, and I miss it a lot. I'm gonna cry. I miss it so much because of Mikey. And you should hire Mikey to be your professional DM. He probably doesn't have time. He probably is actually doing other stuff. But you should try. Offer him more than what I said. Because he's like, oh, no, that's too little. It's like, no. You should pay him more. It is that good. It is actually, he will write literally months of content for you. And you should pay him so much a session. It's so good. And I got it for free.
I appreciate
that. Good. I'm glad you appreciate it. I appreciate it. I don't know how to respond to that. I'm thanking you and you say thank you. That's weird.
I don't know how to respond to it either. So hey.
I love you, man.
I appreciate it. It's a very good compliment. Thank you very much.
You can find me at Spencer13H. You can find Patty at PattyBMTG. Michael, where can people find you?
Best place is probably Instagram. I'm technically have a Twitter, but I never post, and I only use it to follow D&D news, which recently has been super
Spicy.
fun.
No. Hold on.
Get into that.
Hold on. What do we play? We play 5th, right?
Yeah, we play 5th edition.
Yeah, okay. So, we're the least affected?
In some ways, but no, I mean, it's everything.
I'm happy to just jump in. On this podcast specifically, I'll just say, screw WotC.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You already ruined the Magic for me and Patty. Why are you ruining D&D for Michael? What are you doing?
Yeah, been super fun.
Why?
I think 6 letters kind of describe that, right? HASBRO.
Just, oh my gosh.
I mean, literally before this podcast and for the next 3 days, I'm going to be transferring all.
No, don't do it.
All of my
to me,
and all of my things. No. Transferring everything off of D&D Beyond and over to Roll20.
But wait, does that mean I have to do it?
No, that's what I'm just saying. It's for
you're gonna do it
for
me
in all of my campaigns.
Oh man.
I run 4.
Anyway, if you want to support Mikey, who's a great DM who's just doing this for his players, hit him up at.
It's at Cosme Curious.
Yeah. Honestly, I just appreciate people that are watching the show. The show has grown so much over the last little while. The fact that we're doing it weekly again, I've already seen the growth again. Michael, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being an originator of this show. And also shout out to the countries that are listening to the show. We're gonna make this a regular segment, but the number of countries that you are not the U.S. listener and this is your favorite podcast is so great. So thank you so much. Subscribe, review, and we'll see you guys all next week for another episode of the Need to Nerd podcast.